Hey guys, Sebastian here with another Cardano update. This time going over the May 31st update. So let's go over the report real quick. First off, they're talking about upgrading a version of React in the React Polymorph library. So I've talked about this in the past. This is a library they use for dataless that IOHK wrote for how to decouple UI and logic. And to do an upgrade, they had to do a few cleanup work, and they're trying to implement this new version into dataless. There should not be any particular change on the user end. It's just like mostly an engineering change. Also, another thing they did is they looked through npm dependencies to do a security audit. So if you don't know what npm is, it's like the package manager for JavaScript. So if you have a project and you want to depend on projects other people wrote, you usually use npm to depend on them and download them. And so whenever you do this, it's like a security risk because maybe you depend on something somebody else wrote from a different company, and maybe they have some sort of security issue. So that's kind of what the security audit is. They found some potential potential vulnerabilities. Nothing, potential. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It could be that there's nothing severe, but they just want to make sure. And so they're trying to work on that. Another thing is that they're doing some maintenance work for stuff like ESLint and flow check, so it's like a stack analysis and like automatic code formatting, this kind of stuff. And this is mostly for the dataless storybooks. So if you don't know what storybooks are, it's a way to test your JavaScript application in a way, or to help you develop your JavaScript application in such a way that you can see what a component would look like if you were to render just that component, and you can kind of mock different parts of it. So if you're interested in Storybook, you can kind of look it up. I think there's somewhere on YouTube there's a presentation by somebody who wrote it or something that is pretty good. Maybe it's kind of outdated because I think it was a pretty old presentation. I saw it a while back, so maybe it's something better out there. But it's not that complicated of a concept, I think. And then they're doing internal redirect logic refinement. So if you don't know, the way Electron works is internally it's as if you were kind of on a website. Every page has a internal URL that the user can't see, and so they're working on the redirect logic for these URLs. And then lastly, we saw this last week. They're trying to make the UI a bit better for the receive screen. So if you open up dataless and you go to the receive tab, it'll show you a bunch of addresses, and you can generate new addresses. And essentially, you want to filter out the ones that have already been used for maximum privacy usually. And they're trying to make a slight UI improvement for that. For the wallet backend, we're still working on the TLS check. So remember last week, I think I mentioned that they're now trying to integrate this into dataless, in the sense that they've already integrated most part, but now they're trying to integrate the generation utility. So already, if you download the 1.2 update, I believe it'll have the various TLS files. If you delete them, it'll get regenerated, all this kind of stuff. And now this is just a generation utility for anybody who wants to generate other certificates, and that's what they've been working on. And I mean, the pull request is pretty big. It's kind of a mess, so it's been taking a while for them to look through it and see exactly what's happening. That's what's going on that side. Next up, they're talking about the wallet spec, so we'll go into this more detail later in the video. But so essentially, what's happening is that they're trying to implement the input selection and also the fee estimation model. So if you don't know how UTXO works, maybe this doesn't really make sense. So I'm kind of assuming you know how UTXO works. But whenever you want to make a transaction, right, you may not have enough in a single UTXO to fulfill the entire transaction, so you may have to take multiple of them. And that's kind of what they're trying to optimize for. And which ones you take modifies the fees, because it may change the size of the transaction as far as how many bytes it is. It also modifies how you have to handle the fees, right? Do you balance the fees equally to UTXO or whatever, all this kind of stuff. That's what they're working on. And actually later on in this report, we're going to go more into detail about three tricky stuff that they're dealing with. Sorry. But for now, let's just keep going. And they're also saying they're doing some COG formalization of the wallet spec. So mostly this still chapter 2. So you remember in like I think last week is when they started this, maybe 2 weeks ago. So when they started working on chapter 2 COG formalization, and they're still working on that, trying to get it figured out. And so that's that. They actually have like a new wallet spec that they were working on outside the wallet spec that you probably already know. And I think I have that in one of my tabs. I think I kept it open. So I may be able to show you guys that real quick. Not in the full PDF version, but just the LaTeX document. And if you're interested, you can go check it out. By the way, for my YouTube videos, if you don't know, under every video, there's like a list of all the links of everything I'm talking about. Yeah, there's transaction estimation. Anyways, oh yeah, one last thing is that they're still trying to migrate away from the old data layer. So this is still like the acid state data layer that they've been working on for a while. So they're still trying to like implement various components of that. All right, so networking. They're talking about block speed up still. This is still like one of their main priorities. They're talking about like some sort of scheme for decentralization that can record bytes during offsets. I'm not exactly sure what this is referring to. I don't think there's any pull request for this. So there may be like more stuff coming up. But stuff we do know is something that they mentioned previously is they're thinking if it makes more sense to show the syncing from your last checkpoint. So for my understanding of this is like if you were synced at 95% and you open up your wallet, it would, instead of showing 95 to 100, show like a 0 to 100. So like a rescale. And so apparently they're working on that. And the next thing is like the peer discovery. This is like the diffusion layer changes that we've been covering for the past few months, that they've been working on a lot of like optimizations and like a reworking of some stuff and refactoring. So that's kind of what this is referring to. And the routing table, that was like Camellia, I think, was the system they're using, which is like a very popular way to like distribute nodes and files across nodes and this kind of stuff. For the DevOps side, pretty exciting. So they're obviously launched the KEVM testnet, we saw before, but they're also launching a testnet for the Cardano SL, right? Which is actually really exciting. This is something that people have been asking for a very long time. So I'm glad they're finally including it. And we'll kind of go into that more detail later. And another thing that's also really exciting is that they're done verifying that you can now open multiple copies of Daedalus at the same time, right? And this is also something people have been asking for. And more notably, actually, they claim that you will be able to open up the testnet and the mainnet on the same computer without having any problems in the interaction. So that's so really good to have. And yeah, they've also been working on like the faucet for the testnets and all this kind of stuff. And obviously the release that happened for version 1.2, they're also going to have a quick fix, and we'll see that in more detail later. There's like two main problems. One is like updating your wallet in certain cases caused a problem. Corruption in one of the configuration files, which caused the node not to be able to boot up correctly. And then the other one was a problem. Sometimes the PDF generation of the paper wallet would fail if your printer has a very small amount of memory. And so that's kind of like the two bugs they fixed. Next up, they're talking about delegation incentives. Basically, they're saying that they're working on papers and all this kind of stuff. No new news. For Gogwin, the same fundamental research. They're saying that they're still working on the various papers that they've released and or have been in the works. So they're just making progress. For language virtual machine, they're just like giving you basically an example of like a kind of a very quick overview of what kind of different programming languages look like. If you're interested in knowing languages and VMs for Cardano, I have a video on the topic. So maybe be able to give you a better overview than like this paragraph. Next thing they're saying is that they're trying to do their best to address user issues. They've been trying to hire for that somebody who manages the test nets, all this kind of stuff. And you can find the actual testnet at this link here, which will be in the description of my video also, or you can go check it out from the weekly report. Alright, so for exchanges, they're still working on implementation of V1, the API, but it's put on like a slight hold as they try and figure out the input selection and fee estimation that I was talking about earlier. And because they have limited resources, right, they're trying to like reallocate and reprioritize. So yeah, so these are the 3 things I promised to show you guys. One of them is there's how to distribute the fees between all the UTXOs. So that's one thing, and we'll see later on exactly how they're trying to do this. So they have added to the code base a system to kind of like give you the ability to use different distributions, different statistical distributions, and try and like test which one's out to see which one performs better, all that kind of stuff. So they're still doing discussion and trying to see which one's best. But it's related to that. Yeah, consideration if you apply one of the strategies, what if one of the inputs drops below 0, right? This is something you have to take care of. You cannot take more out of a UTXO than is actually present. And then how to deal with rounding issues, right? So imagine if you want to split the fee across multiple UTXO, but it's not divisible, then you have to like slightly make them uneven, right? So these are like some 3 considerations that they've been working on, and doing a lot of testing to see which one is more efficient. Alright, next they're talking about the hardware wallets and multi-sig wallets. So this is kind of like 2 big paragraphs. But essentially they've been working on hardware wallets for a long time. Ledger integration, I've shown you guys the API upgrades as we go along. So they've added like a way to create external wallets, to delete external wallets, all this kind of good stuff from the API. This is not in the version 1.2. I think it's like in the next one. It's probably going to be 1.3. Possibly not like an official API, but I think it'll be in the code base. And so they're still working on that, mostly like trying to spend your ADA that is contained inside the external wallet, which was related to the unsigned transactions that I showed you guys maybe like 1 month ago. And yeah, next up they're talking about multi-sig wallets. So they've added multi-sig to the code base. It's not done yet, it's in the works. I'll show you guys that later. But they're trying to figure out exactly how the multi-sig will communicate with the rest of the stack. Basically how closely it will be coupled with the API and that kind of stuff. And then also what to do if you have a multi-sig wallet and you want to do staking with those, exactly how it works. So this is kind of the various considerations that they're taking into account. And last one, they're trying to work on like a dateless app platform. So it's something that they've been talking about for a while, something that they've been trying to do with dateless, and so apparently they're starting to make progress on this. Alright, let's go into more detail now, go through kind of a bit of the code and slightly like a more overview of the code sense. So this is the pull request for the public testnet deployment. This is where they're talking about how to set up from AWS. So the testnet will be on AWS, I believe, and yeah, so this is AWS, and they have a lot of documentation to say how the testnet is set up, how they set up the keys, the deployment, the generation of the Genesis block, all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in like the AWS deployment, how it works, and how you would possibly go about launching your own testnet if you're interested, you can read kind of this extensive documentation. For dateless, there are a few different things. One of them is the first one we talked about with the React polymorph, where they did the upgrade. This is the bug where the node would sometimes fail when upgrading your wallet. And essentially, if you're wondering what the issue was, there's like an async call that was not like waited on. So that's basically what it was. So that's fixed, a fairly easy change. The PDF printing issues, basically the way they fixed it, if you're interested, is that all the assets originally SVG format. And basically, if your printer has low memory, they'll now do it in the PDF format with transparent PDFs in order to like save some memory. This is the pull request they're doing for the 10.1 update, which will like fix the bugs that were mentioned, that were caught, or rather not caught, they were detected. Another thing is that they have a fix for an issue for transaction IDs with ETC, where if you had two transactions with the same ID, I think, or like if you send transaction to yourself or something like that, then the UI would kind of screw up. This is like purely a UI bug, so they just like fix the UI rendering, which is like a fairly simple change. This is the pull request they have for launching the Cardano SL from Daedalus to allow you to have multiple Daedalus instances at the same time. This this is referring to. This is the X509 generation utility that they've been working on for a while. So that's kind of the progress on that. And then this is the actual redirection logic in the network store that I was talking about. They have kind of like a bullet point list, a few different things that this pull request does related to the redirection. This is the code for the faucet package. So this will be included inside the Cardano SL branch, right? So if you now go to, I believe it's like a root/faucet. So if you go to like the root folder of Cardano SL, there'll be like a folder called faucet where you can see how the faucet is set up, all these kind of considerations. Another one I thought was interesting is for the Explorer API. They want to add an API such that you can see all UTXO that are available for a given address. In the sense that this may be useful for like a debugging or like maybe in the future later on. The reason I don't say it's going to be used as like a feature everybody can use is because it's like not that fast right now. So they're trying to expose this kind of to see how useful it is, and but it'll be disabled, I believe, on the public Explorer. And then the hopes is that this feature is useful to people, and then also if calculating the UTXO for a given address becomes much faster in the future, then they'll be able to provide this API publicly. And then, so this API is actually like a batch mode API, so you give like a list of addresses and it'll calculate the UTXO for all of them. And so that's like something I think some people were asking for that. I think like either GitHub issues or maybe like on some other platform. So hopefully you're watching this video and you can see this and you can like kind of go try it out. Last week we saw structured logging coming. So they've been talking about trying to do structured logging for a long time. They're using the Katip library. So if you're wondering how they're trying to do structured logging, that's kind of how they're trying to go about it. So if you're interested, you can kind of look up Katip, see how it works. This pull request is still a work in progress. But it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do with this. This is the spec I was talking about in the earlier in the video, where they have now a spec that's filed under docs rules.txt. And if I just go down here, you can see the title is a rule-based specification of the blockchain logic. And you can see some of the sections, I believe. Terminology, if I probably just control F, I can find a few of them. Yeah, definitions, parameters, extending a chain, drive functions, issuing a block, mempool, section of longest chain, all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in this kind of topic, you can go check out this tech file and compile it yourself and check out the PDF, or you can wait for like an official release. But they've also so they have like their first draft, and they've been doing review, and so that's like one of the things they're working on now, which is different from the wallet spec that you might have seen earlier. But for the wallet spec you might have seen earlier, they're still working on the implementation. So they're trying to do transaction meta persistence. So you saw this in the past few weeks. This is like something that's still like open. Yeah, I guess it's been open for 27 days. Something they're like slowly tackling, which is trying to add this to some sort of like a database, because the transaction metadata is not for quick querying. a lot of the transaction metadata is actually irrelevant to the blockchain. It does not depend on the state of the blockchain. But some of it does. There's like two different kinds of metadatas. And they're trying to figure out the best way to store this in a quickly accessible format. This is the change for the data layer, where they're trying to use the asset state. So if you don't know what asset state is, just look up asset state. It's like a database principle, and hopefully it'll be like a fairly evident kind of what it is. And then this change also includes account-based pre-filtering and dynamic creation of accounts. So this is like a wallet feature, I guess. Next up, they're talking about the specification, formula spec, clock specification of Chapter 2, which is on UTXO of the wallet spec. So this has been in progress for a while. You can go check it out. There's like a pretty good discussion in the comments about like a clock and how it works and like some design principles. So you may be interested in that. This is the transaction submission according to the wallet spec. By the way, if you haven't read the wallet spec, I suggest you go check it out. It's not as hard to read as you might think. There's a fair amount of math terminology on that goes on. But if you just read the paragraphs probably around the math, probably you will have a good idea of how it works. Obviously, if you understand the math, that's like the ideal situation. But this is basically following the wallet spec. They're trying to do the transaction submission. And then they're doing the fees included option. So this is an option they've been trying to add to the API, where you would basically have a true or false flag if you want the fees included inside the amount that you specify. So they've been trying to think about how to do this for a while. This is like a sketch of how it may work. And this is the evaluation of the input selection policies that I was talking about before. And they built like a simulator for this, and they have like a graph somewhere, I think, like a UI of one of their simulations on like a very basic system. But actually, if you go look at the code, I'm not sure you'll be able to find it real quick. But they have a few different like mathematical models. I shouldn't say models. There's like a few different distributions they've implemented, and then they have like this generator and policy that hooks up to this DSL they've been working on, and then it picks different distributions to try out to see which one works. And they're trying to generate basically these like graphs and all this kind of stuff to see which one works best. This is for the multi-sig addresses. So this is something they've been working on. If you want to see exactly how multi-sig works, basically you can come check out this pull request. But if the high level overview is that you have an address, and you cannot spend money unless like more than X people agree that you can spend it. So imagine you have a address, you share it between 4 people, and you say, okay, nobody can spend money unless 3 out of 4 people agree. This is kind of the implementation for that. So this is something they've been working on. The CHW base pull request is still ongoing. This is related to like additions to the code into the API for hardware and external wallets. So that's still going on. The log classifier, interesting enough, they're still working on it. And so they said they've gotten quite a few reports from the bug we mentioned earlier since the new release. So they're trying to work and handle that to get like a better, faster response on these issues and a faster turnaround to fix any problems that occur. And then lastly, actually it's not lastly, I lied. But another thing is that they've been working on, I shouldn't say they fixed up the benchmarks. So if you didn't know, Cardano SL comes with quite a few benchmarks. And some of them were not tested if they worked or not inside the continuous integration. And so they broke after somebody changed some code. And so now they fixed it. So if you wanted to run some of the benchmarks and previously ran to a mysterious error, this will be the fix for it, so you can run them now. For the mnemonic side, for wallet generation, there are a few problems, a few bugs they fixed. One of them is that there's a bug where you could maybe not necessarily like a bug, but you could reuse the example mnemonic that's given. It says like, hey, for example, here's a mnemonic. This is kind of what it looks like. Multiple people just like copy pasted that instead of like generating their own mnemonic. So to avoid that, they like banned the example mnemonic, I guess. They're also doing a review of the implementation. So the original implementation comes from a project called Hascoin, which is like a predecessor to Cardano SL and this kind of stuff, which was like a re-implementation of cryptocurrency inside Haskell, and it's called Hascoin. If you want to check it out, you can go to input output HK and find the project. It was never like released or anything. It was like a proof of concept, and so that's kind of where the original implementation comes from apparently. And they're trying to like review it, bring it up to speed, and yeah, that's basically they're talking about how it used to work and some problems it had. Not problems related to the current mnemonic generation, but like, okay, if we were to take this and we were to use it to generate, for example, like 48 word mnemonics, then you may have this problem and this kind of stuff. And that's what they're trying to fix. Alright, so now that we're done the code, there's like another few small things that I want to mention. When they wrote a blog post on the semi-formal development of the Cardano wallet, which is originally come from the well-typed blog. So if you are into Haskell development, I suggest checking out the well-typed blog. They have people there working for IOHK, and they've done multiple blogs about like some concepts that are used in the Cardano SL code base. So if you're interested, you can go check that out. Another project is by Twig.io, which is another company that works with OHK, and they recently announced like Astrius, which is a project for compiling Haskell to WebAssembly via GHC. And given that this company works with IOHK and it has a Greek name, I feel like this is probably related. So maybe if you're interested in Haskell and possibly want some sneak peek at some stuff we may see coming up in Cardano, you can go check out this blog post. And lastly, I want to cover Fractalite, which is a group that announced that they're trying to create a Cardano wallet. So they have a project on GitHub called Cardano Wallet under Fractalite, and you can see kind of some pictures of like the development. And I think they're also following the wallet spec in the sense that somebody from their team commented on the wallet spec and fixed like a few typos and spelling mistakes. So it means somebody on their team like read through it at least. So it's nice to see that somebody else like in this space is trying to develop other stuff for Cardano. It's always great to see the community involvement. And that's it for the update for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll see you guys next week for the next update. If you want to see that, you can also follow me on Twitter, YouTube, all this kind of good stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.